Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan on reading in the month of April. So this is going to be a to be read video. And sort of the format that I've adopted so far is we have three categories, the yes, maybe, and the no, which is I will read, maybe will read, and then probably won't but would like to read. And so we've got three in each category that we're going to go over today. So let's jump right into it with the books that I will absolutely be reading come hell or high water in the month of April. And the first is going to be Lake of the Long Sun by Wolfe. So this is book 2 in his Book of the Long Sun series. This is sort of a sequel series to his Book of the New Sun, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And I just finished up reading Nightside the Long Sun by Wolfe, which was the first book in this series, and was blown away. It's amazing. Of course, Wolfe is one of my favorite authors, so big shock. I liked one of his books, and especially one of his famous books. But I'm excited to keep reading in this. Nightside the Long Sun is probably a easier book 1 to get into than The Shadow of the Torturer is with Book of the New Sun. So I'm really interested to see where the series goes from here, because even though it was easier to get into, it's very clear it's just the beginning of the story. There's a lot more to get into, and in typical Wolfe fashion, he ends it with a big reveal that makes me just want to hop into the next book right away to see how that changes things moving forward. So that one for sure we're getting to. And then the next book that we're going to talk about is The Thousandfold Thought by R. Scott Baker. So I've been working through the Second Apocalypse books by Baker and read The Warrior Prophet right at the end of February, right before March, I believe, and loved it. The Warrior Prophet was absolutely amazing. One of the best books that I've read this year easily. And The Thousandfold Thought, from what I can tell, is probably the most controversial book in the series, aside from maybe the ending books. So I'm not sure where I'm going to land on this one. I have been advised to not read The Thousandfold Thought unless I can go right into The Judging Eye, which is the first book in the sequel series, The Aspect Emperor. So currently that's my plan. I've scheduled enough space so that I can go right from one into the other. But the Second Apocalypse series have been really quite the trip to get into. It's been something unlike anything else in fantasy that I've read. It takes familiar things but does some really new things with them. The characters have been very engaging to follow along with. Not necessarily very likable, but that's not really the primary reason why I'm reading this series. And the fantasy elements especially have been good. So if you want to hear my thoughts on The Warrior Prophet, I've got that in my wrap-up from the month of February when I read it. So I definitely plan on getting through the Baker books more. I've got other things on my TBR. So to be able to, put a curtain or make significant progress through one of the big series that I'm reading is definitely something that I would like to do. And I keep reserving the right to tap out of the Second Apocalypse books if they get too intense, too dark at any point. But I at least want to get through this first trilogy, and hopefully at least through part of Aspect Emperor, if not the whole thing, in the next few months here. The third book we're going to talk about here is going to be my self-publish read for the month. So I've been trying to, each month, read one self-published book and one piece of classical literature to try to diversify my reading a little bit. So my self-published book for the month of April is going to be Mercy, Tears of the Fallen by Chance Dillon. So Chance Dillon is a fellow booktuber. I would consider him to be an acquaintance, if not a friend, here on the platform. He's a great guy, and he's been writing this book. He's been sharing writing updates with his book reading updates, and I'm really interested to read this book in its entirety. This was on my list for the top 10 most anticipated reads of 2025, and I'm glad that Chance will be sending me an arc, and I can't wait to read this novel of his. Can't really give you a full pitch here. Chance let me read a sample of the book a few months ago, and I enjoyed that, so I'm interested to see what the whole book will be like. Now we're going to get into the books that are our maybes. I would like to get to, but if there's not time, I'm not gonna really cry too much over this, but these are ones that I would really like to get to in April. So editing Sam here, I'm actually swapping out one of my picks. We're gonna say a book by David Dalglish. So if you haven't seen my interview with David, be sure to check it out. It was a lot of fun. We're spoiler free for like the first hour on the Radiant King, and I really enjoyed the Radiant King. And during the interview, you can see he not so subtly pitched a couple of his books to me, and they sounded interesting. So yeah, I'm going to try and read another one this month. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. So I haven't quite figured out which one yet, but I have purchased a couple. So it'll be one of them. The next book is going to be The Suicide Motor Club by Christopher Buehlman. So last year, actually around this time, I read Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. And I really like that. Now, Between Two Fires and Suicide Motor Club were both written back when Buehlman was primarily a horror author. Before he wrote The Black Tongue Thief and The Daughter's War, and now he's known as being a fantasy author. But before then, he was a horror author. And this one is his vampire novel, or one of his vampire novels. And I heard him pitch this on a podcast where he was talking about Between Two Fires. And this one, once again, sounded really, really interesting. So I've been meaning to get to it for about a year. I believe this one is about vampires who hunt down people who've gotten in car accidents and will feed on them there. And that, I think it's a woman lost a family member to this group of vampires out on the highways, and so she's taken up arms against them and is going to go hunt them down, I believe is what the premise of this is. So anyway, I love Buehlman's writing from Between Two Fires. I'm guessing this is pretty different from that one, but I didn't want to just read his big fantasy books yet. I wanted to read a couple of his other earlier books, kind of from that same era, from that same vein. So we're going to check this out, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one as well. And then the last one that's going to be on the maybes here is going to be The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So this is in contention for being one of the great American novels. It seems everybody read this in school. Well, I didn't. And that might be for the best. I don't know that I've met a single person who read this for school who has good things to say about it. But a lot of people who have read this outside of school, or who have read it for just pure enjoyment, I've heard high recommendations from. So I've read a lot of classic lit, but this is a big hole in my reading. Haven't read any Hawthorne, and especially not The Scarlet Letter, so I need to get to this one. It's about a woman who's, I believe, caught in the act of adultery with, I want to say, the village priest. So she's sort of exiled. A scarlet letter to mark her out as an adulteress is put on all her clothing, and the priest, it does not face the same punishment as she does. So sort of an examining of the hypocrisy of how the sin was dealt with in a Puritan era in America. So not necessarily the cheeriest of reads, but it's not a particularly long book. And once again, it's a classic. So it is a big hole in my reading that I haven't gotten to this yet. So now we're going to get to the three no's on the list of these are ones that I'd like to get to, but we'll kind of see how the month goes here. And the first one is going to be Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. So I love vampire novels. That's come up several times here on my channel, and this has got to be one of the most famous ones out there. I've never read Anne Rice and really have never been interested in reading her. But I got down a very weird YouTube rabbit trail recently, which was listening to her having conversations with Charlie Rose. You know, the old talk show host, now disgraced talk show host. But he had some great conversations on his show. And he probably had like Anne Rice on like 6 or 7 times. And just hearing her talk about her thought process behind the books and the things that she was trying to explore with these eternal beings, these dark eternal beings, sounded really interesting, especially some of the later books in the series where things get more controversial and fans start to drop off. Seems where she maybe got weird and experimental. So there's a couple of Anne Rice books that she pitched on Charlie Rose's show that sounded interesting, but you should probably start at the beginning with the first book, the book that started it all. So Interview with a Vampire is on the list here. Next up in this category is going to be Eyes of the Overworld by Jack Vance. So this is the second book in his Dying Earth series, or the first Dying Earth novel. Thought it was perfectly serviceable, very pulp, very much pulp. My understanding is that the next 3 books in the Dying Earth books are much more connected to each other than the first one was. I think they all follow mainly one character, whereas the first novel didn't. So I'm interested to get to them. I want to get through the Dying Earth novels. You know, they're a classic of the genre, big inspiration for Wolfe. So I almost feel a level of, not obligation, but I want to explore some of the older works around it. And last of all, we have Only the Dead by Jack Carr. So this has got to be book 6 in his James Reese Terminalist series. If you've been watching for a while, you know that I love this series by Jack Carr. I think it is the best modern thriller series that's being written out there. And yeah, I've enjoyed the last few books. I'm still waiting for one to hit the same highs as the first book, The Terminalist, but they're consistently enjoyable. So I do want to get to the next 2 books in the series, which is Only the Dead and then Red Sky Morning, I believe is the next one after this, which is the 7th book in the series. So I want to get to those, get caught up with the series, be current with it when book 8 drops. But yeah, so if I have extra time, you know, I've got another Dresden Files book I can get to. I've been really weirdly itching to reread Moby Dick because I read it when I was probably 13 or 14 and didn't get it, didn't enjoy it, and for some reason, I can't tell you why, but I have just felt this urge to I want to go back to Moby Dick and see if I would get it on a reread. But it is long. So if I can fit it in between all the R. Scott Baker and Gene Wolfe and Christopher Buehlman of the month, then who knows, maybe Moby Dick shows up on the wrap-up as well. So guys, this is a vague TBR for the next month, a vague to-read list. Let me know what you're going to be reading. Part of the purpose of having maybe and probably not on here is if you think I should get to one or make it more of a priority, or if you want to pitch something, that's the opportunity to do that. So let me know what you plan on reading in this next month, if there are any books on this list that I should make more of a priority, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Take care.